I'm Julie Barkey with this Senate update. Senate leadership spoke weeks ago about their optimism that an early tax relief bill could pass this legislature. If the state law is not updated by January 20th, many Minnesota taxpayers will face higher state income tax returns and have to file more complicated tax forms. Chair of the Senate Taxes Committee, Rod Skoe, and Republican Dave Senjem provided us their perspectives on the hearing and the bill.
Well, part of the issue is that the federal government does not pass these tax issues until in December of the previous year, and so we've dealt with this conformity time constraints for a number of years now. But because the federal government makes these changes, then we think for Minnesota taxpayers' simplicity and for them to get the full benefit of the deductions that are due, we need to do a conformity bill before Minnesotans start filing their taxes.
And outline briefly which deductions you're looking at, which specific areas you're looking to conform.
There are a number of deductions in here. The most known ones would be the education deductions. For teachers who spend money in a classroom, they can get up to $250 deduction. There are some higher ed tuition deductions. Then there's a number of other ones, including some for people who give land to conservation, but a lot of fairly technical deductions, but those are the ones that are most known are the education deduction. And the daycare credit was part of the tax bill discussion last year. Minnesota has what is called a working family credit that we dealt with in Senate File 51 that we worked on today, but the daycare credit is not in the conformity bill.
Okay, so let's talk about money. How much would this save? How much would this cost the state, and how much do you think the average Minnesotan can save if this bill is indeed passed?
In the scope of the tax committee, it's a relatively small financial impact. It has around a $17 million cost the first year, about a $19 million gain the second year, and then for the out years, it's about $32 million for the next biennium. Spread over all of the taxpayers of Minnesota, for somebody who gets a deduction, it's significant. For others that don't, they probably won't notice it. But there will be simplicity for those that are eligible because they won't have to add back income on their Minnesota tax return.
So how quickly do you anticipate this moving through?
Our goal is to have this on the floor on the 20th. We have done a schedule analysis, and that's the earliest that we can get it there. It's somewhat out of our control. Part of the bill that we'd like to do is in finance, and that's a technical bill, but it's a finance jurisdiction. And so we've got to get a part of the bill out of the finance committee this week. And then we'll see what Representative David sends over, the chair of the House Tax Committee. Tax bills have to originate in the House, so we'll see what comes.
And that was leading into my next question. Have there been discussions? And if the Senate moves this through quickly, it's moot if the House doesn't.
Oh, I've been in contact with Chair Davids, and my expectation is that he's moving as fast as the Senate is, or maybe even a little faster. I think he's scheduled hearings for today also.
Finally, last year there were 2 tax bills passed, one early, one late. Do you expect the same this year?
Well, this will be an early tax bill, but not quite as large of provisions as the one we had last year.
So do you expect another one later in session?
I'll have conversations with Chair Davids about what he'd like to do. Tax bills have to originate in the House. The Senate can do a lot of work, but until we get a tax bill from the House, we have no vehicle to put them on.
Let's begin with today's hearing. Do you and your caucus essentially support this early tax conformity bill?
Well, absolutely. And I think this is bipartisan. We frankly always support these early bills from the standpoint of federal conformity for our Minnesota taxpayers so that they can know going into certainly the tax preparation season that what the rules are. And so getting this bill out early is important. Conforming, in our view at least, to federal tax law is important. And so it's a joy to be here this morning, first day of tax committee, getting this bill out.
It is going to cost the state a little bit of money. Is that something you support as well?
Well, it certainly does, but on the other hand, it gives money back to the taxpayers of Minnesota who earned it initially anyway. So it gives me great joy to do that.
Okay, so this is obviously not controversial. Let's look ahead to the rest of session. What would you like to see in a second tax bill if indeed one comes from the House over to the Senate?
Well, I think, from our perspective, we have over the last couple of years increased tax rates fairly substantially in Minnesota, and we're talking right now about a gas tax, and so some little mix. If we're going to do some of these things, I think we also have to think about some taxes that we might frankly be able to reduce, whether it's individual income tax, corporate income tax, whatever it might be, S-corps, but we need to give some relief along the way to Minnesota taxpayers who I think at least have been overtaxed given some bills that have occurred in the last couple of years.
Senator, do you think there's going to be any discussion about how quickly this first tax bill is moving through? Do you think there might be some criticism about whether or not there's enough public discussion on it?
Well, I don't think so, because these are conformity bills. Most of the time, I think Minnesota taxpayers want us to conform with the federal rules. They may not like them, but certainly if they're going to be there, let's conform with them. And for the most part, these give advantages to Minnesota taxpayers, so I don't think there'll be a lot of complaints.